A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 62. Meanwhile, Lucian arrived downstairs and went into the car with Roxanne in his arms. She was so deep asleep that she did not stir at all. After putting a jacket over her and fastening her seatbelt, Lucian got into the driver's seat and drove back to the hotel. Worried that he might wake Roxanne up, he drove very slowly. By the time they got back to the hotel, it was already past 9 at night. Roxanne. Lucian parked the car and softly called out to Roxanne. In response, Roxanne scrunched her eyebrows slightly. She then pulled the jacket over her shoulder and covered her ears. Seeing that, Lucian couldn't resist stroking her hair. He got out of the car quietly before carrying her off the car seat. It was breezy outside. Despite the jacket draped over her, Roxanne instinctively snuggled into his chest. Lucian held her tighter and quickened his pace, though his steps remained steady. At the sight of the sweet couple, the people in the hotel lobby looked over with surprise and envy. Ignoring their gazes, Lucian headed upstairs. He did not even spare a glance at Roxanne's room when he passed by. Instead, he brought Roxanne to his room. Just as he was about to set her down on the bed, Roxanne seemed to sense something and held on to his shirt tightly. Lucian could only bend down and gently coax, "Be good and let go. I won't leave. It'll be uncomfortable if you sleep like this." While he spoke, he pulled away her fingers lightly. Perhaps Roxanne heard him, as she furrowed her eyebrows again and released him. Lucian couldn't help chuckling when he saw her expression. After tucking her in, he caressed her head. As the effect of alcohol kicked in, Roxanne frowned in discomfort and whimpered. Lucian immediately stood up to pour her a glass of water. Next, he called the front desk and asked for some hangover pills. He finally managed to put the pill in Roxanne's mouth after a few attempts, but she did not swallow it even after some time. Noticing that, Lucian held the glass next to her lips so she could take the pill with water. However, it seemed that Roxanne was unhappy about being fed the pill, so she refused to open her mouth. "Roxanne, be a good girl. Open your mouth and eat the medicine," said Lucian while pinching her cheeks gently. Roxanne turned her head away with a pout and buried herself in the blanket. Her eyebrows were deeply furrowed, unwillingness written all over her face. "No, I can't drink any more. I'm serious," she muttered while shaking her head repeatedly under the blanket. Apparently, she thought someone was feeding her alcohol. While Lucian felt sorry for Roxanne, he also found her antics amusing. The warm water in his hand was getting cold. Narrowing his eyes, Lucian lifted the glass to his mouth and took a sip. In her stupor, Roxanne felt someone pulling her blanket away. She hurriedly reached out to grab it, but someone captured her chin just then. She was forced to open her mouth as a hand pinched her chin. The next moment, she felt something warm on her lips. Humph! Roxanne was forced to swallow the water from Lucian's mouth. She was about to push him away, but as her dry throat felt nourished, she slowly retracted her hands. When Lucian sensed Roxanne's cooperation, his gaze darkened. He should have stopped after feeding her water and making sure she swallowed the pill, but he couldn't hold himself back from clasping her chin again and savoring her lips. It was only when Roxanne ran out of breath and began struggling that he reluctantly let her go. Not daring to glance at the woman on the bed again, Lucian headed straight into the bathroom. After a cold shower, he barely managed to contain the burning desire within him. Lucian decided to spend his night on the couch. Yet, the moment he opened the bathroom door, an alluring-looking Roxanne came up to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. Lucian paused abruptly and looked down at the woman before him. Roxanne's lips were still red and swollen from the kiss earlier. With half-lidded eyes, she tiptoed forward to close their distance. Roxanne. Heat gushed toward Lucian's lower body as he took in the way Roxanne looked. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. As if not hearing him at all, Roxanne sealed his lips with a soft moan. Lucian's cold shower proved to be useless in face of Roxanne's unexpected attack. Placing his hands over her slim waist, he walked her to the bed. After laying Roxanne down, Lucian held himself back with all his might and clamped her wrists with his hands, forcefully putting a distance between them. "Did you have a dream?" That was the only explanation Lucian could think of. Although Roxanne had already accepted him, he could see from the way she usually acted that she wasn't ready to take their relationship to the next step yet, much less initiate something like this. There was a dazed look in Roxanne's eyes. When she heard Lucian, she frowned slightly in confusion. Then she began squirming in an attempt to get closer to him. Lucian's gaze was as deep as the sea. His Adam's apple bobbed as he looked at Roxanne, but in the end, he clenched his jaw and turned away. He was scared he would lose control if he kept seeing her that way. She's drunk. If something happens now, she might regret it later. Lucian, unable to touch the man above her, Roxanne whined and stared at him with moist eyes. Lucian gulped hard when he heard her voice. Instinctively, his hands slackened a bit. The next moment, Roxanne struggled out of Lucian's grip and pressed against him, igniting the fire within him. The last bit of rationality in Lucian dissipated with that. With heavy breaths, he leaned in and took over. After the passionate session, Roxanne was totally knocked out. Lucian was about to massage her waist, but before he could even touch her, she croaked, "No more." She reflexively raised her hand in defense even in her sleep, albeit weakly. A dark look fleeted across Lucian's eyes again at her voice. Nevertheless, he suppressed his urge out of consideration for her and carried her into the bathroom. After dousing himself in cold water, he cleaned Roxanne up. Having had a warm shower, Roxanne drifted off to deep sleep in his arms. If it weren't for the marks on Roxanne's body, Lucian would have thought everything that happened earlier was just a dream. He brought her back to the bed and carefully dressed her in pajamas. Roxanne was obviously exhausted as she did not wake up throughout the process. When Lucian settled Roxanne down, he hesitated for a while before finally lying down beside her. "We've already done everything, so there's no need to worry about things like this." With that in mind, Lucian pulled Roxanne into his embrace and closed his eyes with satisfaction. The next morning, Lucian woke up first. Roxanne had drunk too much and gone through a lot the night before, so she was still fast asleep in his arms. Lowering his head, Lucian was met with the adorable sight of Roxanne's face. Her breaths were soft and steady, her long, doll-like lashes quivering slightly. When he moved his gaze downward, the marks he left on her body came into view. Right at that moment, memories of the previous night rushed into Lucian's head. His breathing turned labored as he wrapped his arms around Roxanne tightly. Overcome by his emotions, he trailed feather-light kisses on her forehead, her eyes, and down her neck. Feeling something ticklish on her face, Roxanne struggled to wake up. When she opened her eyes, she saw Lucian's handsome features right before her and felt his hot breath fanning over her face. Lucian was holding her waist, his touch scorching her skin. Roxanne froze for a few seconds before realization hit her. Like a startled prey, she shoved Lucian away and bolted upright in bed while holding the blanket to her body. The soreness that shot up from her waist made her flinch, but she gritted her teeth and stopped herself from crying out. "You?" She widened her eyes in panic and questioned, "What happened? Why are we here like this?" Lucian couldn't help but frown when she suddenly pushed him. "You don't remember?" Roxanne was tense all over, and upon hearing Lucian's question, she was further taken aback. "What do you mean?" Even though she did not want to face the truth, her sore waist and the marks on her body were solid evidence of what had happened. "Last night, we really..." However, Roxanne only remembered being forced to drink a lot at the restaurant and then being let out with Jack's help. Her memory of the happenings afterward, including Lucian's appearance, was blurry. She had no recollection at all as to what occurred after they returned to the hotel. So what really happened last night? Judging from Lucian's tone, it sounds like I was the one who took the initiative. Oh no. Roxanne grew more anxious the more she thought about it. When she saw Lucian's confused expression, guilt flashed across her eyes. "You were drunk last night? I brought you back and fed you hangover medicine." While rubbing his temple, Lucian sat up and recounted the events last night. "When I came out of the bathroom after taking a shower, you suddenly approached me. I warned you, but..." Lucian only had a towel wrapped around his waist, and red marks covered his exposed torso. At that point, Lucian turned to glance at Roxanne. He did not need to speak further, Roxanne could already guess what transpired thereafter. "He warned me, but I wouldn't stop clinging to him." Upon remembering that scene, Roxanne averted her eyes as a blush painted her cheeks. "That's true. There's no way Lucian would take advantage of me while I was drunk. But why did I act that way?" Lucian's eyes grew dark when he saw Roxanne's reddened face. He went on, "I did consider the possibility that you'd react like this when you wake up, so I kept stopping you. But you wouldn't listen." Roxanne turned around to defend herself, but the marks on Lucian's chest came into sight like a reminder of how passionate she had been the night before. For a moment, she was stumped for words. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she gripped the blanket with despair, overcome with the urge to bury herself in it. "What was with me last night? Why was I so?" Lucian was still talking. "It has already happened. If you want to blame someone, then blame me. I'm the one who lost control." Roxanne covered her face in embarrassment. "Stop talking. Please leave and let me cool down on my own." Seeing Roxanne get embarrassed from his teasing, a hint of a smile appeared on Lucian's lips, but it disappeared in a flash, and he returned to his serious expression. "But now that I think about it, I feel like your response last night was rather strange." He stared at her intently and asked, "Do you not remember anything?" Roxanne covered her face with her hands and tried hard to recall what had happened. However, no matter how she tried to remember, she could only come up with her drunken foolishness. Lucian's figure somewhat flashed before her, but she could not remember exactly what they did. If it weren't for the marks on their bodies or the soreness of her waist, Roxanne would not have been able to guess what had happened the night before. After some time, she felt defeated and gave up on trying to remember. She shook her head and looked at Lucian. "I can't remember anything." Lucian frowned. "How about now? Is your body feeling all right? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" When she heard him ask those questions, Roxanne immediately thought of her sore waist. "Even if I did initiate things last night, I can't believe Lucian is such a beast." Every time she moved, she felt as though her waist would break in half. However, with the current situation, she felt embarrassed to say that her waist hurt. Her face was red as she shook her head. "No." Lucian saw through her strange behavior. He glanced at her waist and said apologetically, "Sorry. Last night, I lost control." "Stop." Roxanne quickly interrupted and stopped him before he could continue. "I don't want to think of what happened last night anymore." Lucian stopped himself. He turned serious as he said, "I also think you acted strangely last night. You were acting the same like that night 6 years ago." Roxanne scrunched her eyebrows. 6 years ago, she was the one who fed Lucian the medication. After that, she drank some of it because she was afraid she would not have the guts to do it. "No way. Did I fall into someone's trap last night?" However, when she thought of the drinking party last night, it did not seem like anyone would harbor such ill intentions toward her. Plus, there were so many people at the drinking party. If someone were to do something, they would not do it in such a crowded place. No matter how she racked her brain, she could not remember how she ended up in that state. Instead, it only jumbled up her thoughts. Roxanne had only just calmed down. However, when she heard what he said, the redness on her face that had not subsided suddenly spread to her ears again. "It's getting late. I want to shower and change. Please get out." Her face was as red as a tomato when she struggled out of Lucian's arms. She pretended to be angry as she looked at the man before her. Lucian frowned slightly and helplessly said, "But this is my room." Roxanne's expression froze when she heard his reply. She quickly looked around the room. Sure enough, she did not see the suitcase she had placed beside the bed. "This isn't my room." Just as she was about to ask Lucian why he had brought her to his room, he took the initiative to explain. "You drank too much last night, and I didn't have the keycard to your room, so I could only bring you here." Roxanne could not refute his explanation. She frowned as she looked around the room. The clothes she wore last night were neatly folded by Lucian and placed at the foot of the bed. They still stunk of alcohol, so she could no longer wear them. She was only wearing a robe provided by the hotel, and there were love marks all over her neck and the top of her chest. Roxanne felt she had no courage to walk out with only this robe on. All of a sudden, she felt troubled. Lucian got out of bed and said in a deep voice, "I'll shower first. You should sleep a little longer. I'll grab some clothes for you later." Roxanne hesitated for a moment but agreed since there was no other choice. Lucian made his way toward the bathroom. The muscles on his back bounced slightly as he walked. Roxanne's gaze landed on the red claw-like marks on his back. Roxanne gasped and covered herself with the blanket, blushing from embarrassment. All she could hear was the sound of water coming from the bathroom. After some time, the water stopped. Roxanne subconsciously tensed up. She did not know how to face Lucian. "I'll go and grab your clothes for you." Lucian opened the door and left after telling her that. Luckily, he did not make things difficult for her. Only then did Roxanne peek out from under the blanket and sigh in relief. While Lucian was not in the room, she hurriedly got up from the bed and entered the bathroom. She did not expect a lingering cold breeze inside the bathroom. It was evident that Lucian had taken a cold shower. A complicated look crossed Roxanne's eyes when she realized that. Her worries about the night before also dissipated. Only when she was showering did she remember that Lucian had helped clean her after their steamy session last night. "No wonder I felt nothing strange except my sore waist when I woke up this morning." Roxanne felt her cheeks redden when she remembered that Lucian had helped to clean her. She would not have been that embarrassed if they had only done the wild thing. After all, they did it 6 years ago, and she had been the one to initiate it back then. "Can't believe he helped me to clean my body, lol." Of a sudden, someone knocked on the door. Roxanne quickly composed herself and scooped some water to pat her face, trying to calm herself down. "I left your clothes at the door. You can grab them when you're done. I'll wait for you at the entrance." Lucian's voice rang out from behind the door. Perhaps it was because she had realized that Lucian had washed her body, but Roxanne felt herself become more sensitive to his voice. She was stunned momentarily before guiltily answering, "Thank you. I'm sorry for troubling you." There were no movements outside the door, but through the frosted glass, she could see that Lucian had placed her clothes on the chair before he left. Roxanne endured the pain in her waist as she finished up her shower. Upon putting on her clothes and stepping out of the bathroom, she saw Lucian standing in the corridor. "I'm done." Lucian promptly approached her and abruptly stretched his hand toward her. His action confounded her for a moment. Then, she looked in the direction his hand was stretching toward and saw him lifting her collar. She was stunned for a moment before she realized why he was doing that and reflexively avoided his line of sight. "I have to go for medical consultation, so I'll be leaving now." Then, she lowered her head and walked past him. Knowing that her thoughts were still in disarray, Lucian decided the best course of action was to stay quiet and let her calm down by herself. After he watched her leave, he returned to his room. Roxanne mentioned she needed to do medical consultation because she was simply worried about the residents of the nursing home and not because she felt guilty. Upon glancing at the time and seeing it was almost 8. "We had already reached the nursing home at this time yesterday, yet Jack hasn't even come out yet." Hence, she knocked on Jack's door as she was perplexed, wanting to ask him what was going on. However, no one replied to her, despite the continuous knocking. Just as Roxanne was about to call Jack, a cleaner stepped out of the neighboring room and helpfully informed her, "The person in that room has already checked out." Roxanne was confused. "When? I thought we were going to attend the medical consultation together today. We even had dinner together last night." "After he came back last night?" Upon thanking the cleaner, she looked away, feeling rather uneasy. Jack seemed fine during the dinner yesterday. Why did he come back here last night just to check out? If I remember correctly, he was going to send me back yesterday, so logically, he should be preparing to return together with me. The more she thought about it, the weirder she found the situation to be. Maybe something happened after I was drunk. Thus, she returned to Lucian to find out what happened. After she knocked on the entrance twice, Lucian opened the door and stared at her. "What's the matter? Aren't you in a hurry to attend the medical consultation?" Roxanne wasn't sure what was going on with herself, but she really didn't want to be misunderstood by Lucian, especially regarding her relationship with Jack. After ending her sentence, she gazed at his expression carefully. Her explanation calmed him down, prompting him to withdraw his frigid expression. "He wasn't acting differently last night, and I had no conflict with him. I don't know why he suddenly checked out." He spoke as though his dispute with Jack last night didn't happen. Fearing that she might have misunderstood him, Roxanne held back from further thinking about the matter and nodded. "Then I'll give him a call." Lucian's eyes darkened as he felt the urge to stop her. However, he just kept quiet because he believed he should act magnanimously after she explained their relationship voluntarily. After she bade him goodbye, she returned to her room and called Jack. It took a while before he answered the phone. "What's the matter, Ms. Jarvis?" Frowning, Roxanne confronted, "The cleaner said you checked out last night." "MHM," said Jack, thinking she was wondering why he had left. To his surprise, she questioned, "What about today's medical consultation? Are you still going?" The look in his eyes darkened a little. Despite his displeasure, he still sounded gentle when he answered, "I won't be going. We spent the past 2 days checking up on the elderly with severe affliction, so all that's left are the relatively healthy ones. You can let the other doctors examine them. I'll head over there if there are any problems." Then he sighed. "Also, I was feeling quite tired yesterday, so I wanted to rest today." He was hinting at Roxanne to ask him about what happened last night. However, she didn't catch his intentions and merely said, "Then you should rest well, Mr. Damaris. Don't worry, I can head over to the nursing home too if any problems pop up." Jack was not pleased and he frowned. "Thank you, Ms. Jarvis." She didn't sense the change in his tone and smiled. "It's what I'm supposed to do." "Oh yeah, I recently decided to develop a new medicine, which may require collaboration with your research institute. I look forward to working with you when the time comes, Ms. Jarvis." Without hesitation, she agreed passionately, "Sure." "Oh, I almost forgot. How are you feeling right now? I remember you drank a lot last night. Do you feel unwell?" Jock asked probingly. "I was planning to send you back first, but Mr. Farwell insisted on doing it instead." "Did he take good care of you?" "Yes, he did." She forced herself to answer coldly and tersely. She didn't want to say anything more than thought. Upon listening to her reply, he scowled. Something must have happened last night. Why else would she be so unwilling to speak further? "You should rest if you're tired, Mr. Damaris." "I won't bother you anymore," uttered Roxanne. Just as Roxanne ended the call, someone knocked on her door. When she opened it, she saw Lucian standing outside. His eyebrows remained furrowed as though he didn't expect her to open the door that quickly. "What's the matter?" Roxanne was puzzled. "Have you taken care of your matters? It's about time for you to leave, right?" Slowly, his eyebrows relaxed. "Almost. I was wondering if you want me to drive you to the nursing home." In reality, he just wanted to ensure she didn't speak with Jack for too long. Upon recalling Jack's words, Roxanne said, "Thanks, but I don't need to visit the nursing home today." The elderly with serious illnesses had received their examinations yesterday, so all that's left today are the healthy ones. "Then we should return home soon," suggested Lucian. "The children are still waiting at home, and Horrington's branch requires my assistance. Most importantly, if we keep staying here, it'll be hard for me to prevent her from interacting with Jack if he shows up." Initially, she wanted to agree to that, but she was concerned there would be accidents at the nursing home, so she thought about it and refused. "You can return first if you're in a hurry. I think I'll go back a little later." As he knitted his eyebrow, he gazed at her scrutinizingly. Knowing he had misunderstood something, Roxanne explained resignedly, "I'm worried that I missed someone with a serious condition yesterday. If the doctors there spot any today, I'll be able to head over there in time to treat them. So, I want to stay in Jadeboro for half a day." His expression relaxed as he nodded. "I'll keep you company." His tone was so natural that it stunned her. Lucian clarified, "I brought you here, so I should be the one to bring you back. Besides, I don't have anything important going on right now. I can stick around for a little longer." She was touched. "He didn't say it, but I know he's only waiting for me. Still, it'll probably be boring to wait in the hotel for half a day if nothing happens in the nursing home. How about—" When her train of thought ended, she suggested, "Since it's still early, let's go shopping and buy some presents for the children. This way, we won't get bored, and I can still respond to anything that crops up in the nursing home on time. Besides, we'll be able to bring some presents back home for the kids. I bet they'll be happy to receive them." Lucian nodded. Thus, they packed their bags and checked out before he drove them to the commercial district. On their ride there, they occasionally exchanged a few words in a comfortable atmosphere. The last time Roxana come to Jonesboro was 6 years ago. Many things in the city had changed during those 6 years, so much so thought she found the place somewhat unfamiliar. Thankfully, Lucian was there to explain patiently what changes had been made to the city, when, and why. She very much enjoyed listening to his commentary. "I heard from Madeline thought there's a famous children's theme park in Jodhpur." Her tone was filled with regret when she said thought. "I bet the children would be thrilled to visit Thought Place." Upon hearing that, Roxanne turned to him reflexively. "It feels like we're a married couple planning our next trip, but we aren't because of my selfishness and worries. As a result, the boys still don't have a father." As she thought about that, a look of remorse flashed past her eyes. Lucian detected the sudden change in her mood and inquired, "What's the matter? Are you worried about the elderly in the nursing home?" Pursing her lips, she squeezed out a smile at him. "It's nothing. I was just thinking about the children and wondering how they're doing right now." He comforted, we're returning in the afternoon, so we'll see them soon. They're smart, so they can take care of themselves." Roxanne nodded. Moments later, Lucian parked the car in the underground parking lot under the commercial district. After they entered the mall, they went straight to the children's department. She knew what the children liked, so her hands were quickly full from carrying a bunch of stuff, like toys and clothes. They shopped until it was afternoon. By that point, Roxanne's mood was back to normal. She glanced at her phone and saw no doctors had contacted her. Thus, she knew the situation in the nursing home was all right and went to pay for her items. Just as she was going to use her phone to pay, Lucian handed his bank card to the cashier. Roxanne was taken aback for a moment. When she returned to her senses, she rejected, "I can pay." While the items were meant for children, they cost more than 10,000 in total. Hence, she didn't want him to pay. However, he sternly said, "Some of these are presents for Essie. Besides, Archie and Benny like me. I feel like I should gift them something. I'm not great at picking presents, so I'll pay for the ones you choose. Consider these our gift to them." Hearing that, Roxanne hesitated. Meanwhile, the cashier grinned at her as they held the bank card. "Since you two are together, you should let him pay. Our store always has a rule that the dad should be the one to do it." Again, Roxanne pondered about her decision. She had the money to buy the items, but the employee's words were making her waver. "I suppose the boys will be happy if Lucian is gifting them these so their father." With thought in mind, she put woo her phone and expressed her gratitude. "I thank you on behalf of my children." Lucian frowned, seemingly displeased by her polite attitude. However, he would where he couldn't really say nothing at the moment, so he silently accepted her gratitude and gestured for the cashier to use the cord. After paying for the items, they left the mall with money bags. Regret bubbled in Roxanne's heart after they walked for a while. "I bought too many things for the children, especially Archie and Benny. Ugh, it's quite difficult to walk with these two Lego spaceships I bought for the boys. It takes up so much space." Her speed gradually decreased as she searched for something to put the bags on to rest her hands. "Wait for me here. I'll take these to the car before driving here to pick you up," Lucian said. Before she could reply, he quickened his steps and went to the parking lot with hands full of bags. "I suppose the boys will be happy if Lucian is gifting them these as their father." With that thought in mind, she put away her phone and expressed her gratitude. "I thank you on behalf of my children." Lucian frowned, seemingly displeased by her polite attitude. However, he was aware he couldn't really say anything at the moment, so he silently accepted her gratitude and gestured for the cashier to use the card. After paying for the items, they left the mall with many bags. Regret bubbled in Roxanne's heart after they walked for a while. "I bought too many things for the children, especially Archie and Benny. Ugh, it's quite difficult to walk with these two Lego spaceships I bug height for the boys. It takes up so much space." Her speed gradually decreased as she searched for something to put the bags on to rest her hands. "Wait for me here. I'll take these to the car before driving here to pick you up," Lucian said. Before she could reply, he quickened his steps and went to the parking lot with hands full of bags. Roxanne was getting too drained to move. However, she didn't want to wait at her spot because her current location was still quite far away from the parking lot, and waiting for Lucian's was equally tiring. Hence, she continued to advance slowly with the bags in her hands. However, it had been a long while since she was in Jadeboro, and there had been many significant changes in the city, especially in the commercial district. The many intersections were also challenging to identify. After she passed through an intersection, she couldn't recall where the parking lot was. She hesitated briefly before sitting on a bench at the side of the road and putting the bags down. It's hard to say if I'll find the parking lot if I keep going. Even worse, Lucian may not be able to locate me. After a while, she received a call from Lucian. Promptly, Roxanne picked up the phone. "Where are you?" He sounded tense. She guiltily surveyed her surrounding and answered, "In front of a Starbucks." Then, fearing he couldn't find her, she added, "I only passed by an intersection. It should be easy for you to find me." "Got it. Stay where you are. I'll be right there." Lucian furrowed his eyebrows resignedly. "I asked her to stay because I was worried she'd grow tired and lose her way. It's very easy for someone unfamiliar with the intersections in the commercial district to get lost. I didn't expect she would disobey me. Thank goodness I know where the Starbucks is." Soon, he spotted Roxanne sitting on a bench, looking like a child who felt guilty for losing the way after running around. The guilty expression on her countenance intensified when she saw him. Upon rubbing her nose, she stood and picked up the bags. "Didn't I ask you to stay there?" Lucian promptly lent a helping hand. Roxanne reflexively defended herself. "I thought I could walk further," but, as she spoke, she saw him grabbing half of the bags on the ground. Lucian stopped when one of his hands was full and watched Roxanne take the rest with one hand as well. Just as she straightened her back and wanted to apologize, her free hand was seized by him. Then, he uttered calmly, "I'll walk slowly. Follow me closely. He's treating me like I'm a child." She blushed, so she hummed a reply in acknowledgement and followed him. After posing through the intersection, she realized she wasn't too far off from her destination. It was just thought she went the opposite way when posing by O Crossroads. Upon realizing her foolish mistake, she felt very frustrated and regretful. Lucian led her to the underground parking lot before letting go of her hand. Then he placed the bags orderly in the trunk. By the time Roxanne returned to her senses, the trunk was body full, so she had to put her bags into the back seat. She felt exasperated ongoing upon seeing the packed trunk. "I was so focused on buying gifts for the children, thought I didn't notice I went overboard." "When did you buy it?" questioned Roxanne with a slightly tense tone and trembling eyelashes. "We didn't leave each other when we were in the mall, and I didn't see him buy a gift." Lucian knitted his eyebrow and answered in a resigned tone, "When I brought my bags here earlier. I didn't expect you to get lost when I was delayed for a few minutes." His lips curled into a wry smile when he recalled the rare dazed look on her face from earlier. When he brought that up, she blushed and reflexively avoided his stare, inadvertently shifting her line of sight to the box on the seat. Lucian coaxed, "Get in the car. It's getting late. If we don't set off now, it'll be night by the time we return home." Nodding hesitantly, Roxanne stepped into the seat. He entered the driver's seat and drove off. Meanwhile, she put the white box on her knees instead of opening them. He didn't urge her either. After they left the parking lot, he asked, "Do you want to visit the nursing home first, or should we head straight back home? I know she's worried about the residents there, and we'll be heading in its direction anyway." His question came as a surprise for Roxanne. She pondered for a moment and answered, "The nursing home first." "Okay." Lucian then drove toward the destination. Seeing how familiar he was with the path to the nursing home, she wondered, "I don't remember telling him the address, yet he seems to know where to go. No, I shouldn't overthink it." After the car was parked in front of the nursing home, Roxanne stepped into the building. She saw the doctors were still busying about, but she could tell from their expressions that the rest of the residents were in good condition. Still, she approached a few doctors and asked them about the situation. It wasn't until she had confirmation the residents were doing fine that she relaxed. Before she left, she came across a few of the residents she examined yesterday. They were worried when they saw Jack wasn't with her. "Why didn't you visit with Dr. Damaris today, Dr. Jarvis? Did you two have a fight?" Roxanne was bidding the other residents goodbye with a smile when she heard that. Her grin froze before she turned around and explained resignedly to the old woman speaking to her. "You have misunderstood our relationship, Granny. Dr. Damaris and I are just colleagues." Just as she ended her sentence, she felt the person behind her stepping closer to her. She didn't mind since it wasn't the first time they stood so intimately with each other. Moments later, she saw the realization in the residents' eyes. "Ah, it does seem like we've misunderstood your relationship with Dr. Damaris, Dr. Horvis. This is your boyfriend, right?" The old woman swiftly corrected herself and inspected Lucian briefly. He's tall and handsome. I think he's a good fit for you, Dr. Horvis." Roxanne opened her mouth, intending to offer some clarification. However, when she thought about the things thought happened between her and Lucian, she didn't have it in her to deny thought's statement. The edges of Lucian's mouth curved upward. He behaved gentlemanly with no intention of denying it, too. The old woman stared at Roxanne caringly. "Is he a doctor too?" "He's not," Roxanne replied rigidly. In response, the old woman shook her head and remarked sincerely, "Then he's a little lacking compared to Dr. Damaris. Don't think you two have much to talk about since you two are not in the same profession." Just as she ended her sentence, she felt the person behind her stepping closer to her. She didn't mind since it wasn't the first time they stood so intimately with each other. Moments later, she saw the realization in the residents' eyes. "Ah, it does seem like we've misunderstood your relationship with Dr. Damaris, Dr. Jarvis. This is your boyfriend, right?" The old woman swiftly corrected herself and inspected Lucian briefly. He's tall and handsome. I think he's a good fit for you, Dr. Jarvis." Roxanne opened her mouth, intending to offer some clarification. However, when she thought about the things that happened between her and Lucian, she didn't have it in her to deny that statement. The edges of Lucian's mouth curved upward. He behaved gentlemanly with no intention of denying it, too. The old woman stared at Roxanne caringly. "Is he a doctor too?" "He's not," Roxanne replied rigidly. In response, the old woman shook her head and remarked sincerely, then he's a little lacking compared to Dr. Damaris. I don't think you two have much to talk about since you two are not in the same profession. Roxanne could feel the temperature around Lucian dropping rapidly, so she interrupted the old lady. I'm just here to check up on you all's condition. Since all of you are doing fine, I'll be going home now. I'll visit if I have the time in the future. The residents knew her home was in Horrington after chatting with her yesterday. Thus, they urged the couple to leave right away to avoid driving at night. Roxanne didn't feel relieved even after leaving the nursing home because Lucian was still visibly bothered by the old lady's words. Resignedly, she comforted, Don't take that granny's words to heart, Lucian. There really isn't anything between Mr. Damaris and me. He glanced at her. Do you converse with him often? It's just medical stuff. That's all, clarified Roxanne seriously. I only got to know Jack because we're in the same field. Aside from matters related to medicine, there isn't anything else for us to talk about, so there's no way I'll have feelings for him. When Lucian heard that, his expression returned to normal. When the two of them returned to the car, she still placed the box on her thighs instead of opening it. What aren't you opening it? Do you not like it? He started the engine and glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Shaking her head, she replied, No, I just want to open it after we return. She was too embarrassed to open his gift in front of him, especially when she didn't know what he had bought. Disappointment flashed past his eyes when he heard that, though he didn't force her. By the time they arrive in Horrington, the sky had turned dark. Lucian sent Roxanne straight back to the mansion. The children were playing around with Linda in the living room. Upon hearing the sound of a car, they scampered to the entrance. Mommy! Daddy! Estella immediately clung to Roxanne's leg and looked at her. Grinning, Roxanne patted the girl's head. Did you miss me? Estella nodded and replied cutely, I missed you a lot. Aunt Linda told us she was going to video call you just earlier. The boys stood behind their sister obediently while gazing at their parents. Since their sister was hogging their mother, they could only approach their father. However, they still weren't too used to doing that kind of stuff, so they carefully stared at him instead. Lucian grinned and strolled toward the boys as though he could read their minds. Your mommy bought a lot of gifts for you too. Come and help me unload them from the car. He patted them before turning to the trunk and opening it. The boys were already happy their father patted them, so when they saw a trunk full of gifts before them, they were downright ecstatic. Obediently, they went to him and lent him a hand. Lucian carried the bags out of the trunk while they transported them into the mansion like they were porters. When Roxanne witnessed that scene and saw how enthusiastic the boys were, she was amused. While the boys were enjoying themselves, they were moving pretty slowly. Thus, after Roxanne watched them for a while, she also helped out. Soon, everything in the vehicle was carried into the mansion. Meanwhile, Estella climbed into the car to assist the boys. When she left, she spotted the white box on the passenger seat. Intrigued, she brought the box out of the car and asked, What's this, Mommy? Everyone turned to the girl when they heard that. Upon eyeing the box, Roxanne subconsciously glanced at Lucian. He just stood at the side nonchalantly as though that box had nothing to do with him. Since the adults didn't tell Estella she couldn't touch it, and she didn't receive a reply from Roxanne, she opened it out of curiosity. It was then Roxanne saw what was inside in the box. It's so pretty. Estella stood on her toes and lifted her hand to let her mother see the object taken from the box. Is this Daddy's gift for you, Mommy? In response, Roxanne lowered her eyes and saw a platinum necklace embedded with a glittering diamond in the girl's palm. It looked simple yet exquisite. The boys sauntered closer to their mother with intrigue when they heard what their sister said. Upon seeing it was a necklace, the boys exchanged glances and encouraged, "You should help Mommy put it on, Mr. Farwell. I bet Mommy will look good with it." Roxanne took a step back reflexively and turned to Lucian with a troubled look. "I'm already embarrassed that Essie opened the gift in front of him, yet now the children are urging him to put it on for me. Daddy." After trotting to her father's side, Estella lifted the necklace and stared at him with anticipation. Lucian lowered his head, patted the girl, grabbed the necklace, and approached Roxanne. Even though Roxanne wanted to step away, she didn't feel like it would be a good idea to do so in front of the children. Thus, she could only watch him arrive in front of her. The children surrounded their parents and peered at them with excitement. Lucian grinned. "Since they're eager to watch me put this on you, let's just get it over with, all right? Why is he saying it like he's forcing himself to do it?" Resignedly, she shifted her sight toward the children and met their bright eyes. Of course, she knew they wouldn't stop egging her about it if she didn't play along. Therefore, she lowered her head, revealing her fair, slender neck. As Lucian took one step closer to her, his leather shoes entered her field of view. Then his refreshing yet mature scent rushed into her nose. Roxanne panicked when she felt an occasional, tingly sensation on her neck. It was caused by his sleeve brushing on her neck. Moments later, he stepped back while she felt the cold necklace around her neck. She sighed inwardly, adjusted her expression, and slowly lifted her head. Unbeknownst to her, the children saw her expression when she bent her head down. Just as Roxanne raised her head, she heard Benny asking, "Were you blushing earlier, Mommy?" Upon hearing Benny's words, Roxanne felt embarrassed again after having just regained her composure. Echoing through her ear, Lucian's deep voice carried a hint of amusement. "Take a look. Do you like it? I wasn't really sure what to buy and the sales attendant recommended me another design. However, I think this one suits you better." Roxanne seized upon the opportunity to avert her gaze from his. Turning around, she checked the rearview mirror to see how she looked. She was greeted by the sight of a platinum necklace circling her neck. Hanging between her collarbones was a minimalistic round pendant that was covered with crushed diamonds. Sitting right in the center, it made her look as if her collarbones were sparkling. It was a sight that bedazzled her. Lucian, who had somehow walked up behind her, asked anxiously, "Do you like it?" Upon regaining her senses, Roxanne turned around and smiled. "It's beautiful. I love it, Mr. Farr." She almost addressed him as Mr. Farwell out of habit, but the thought of their currently ambiguous relationship made her change her mind. "Thank you. I appreciate it very much." As what she almost called him by didn't escape his notice, Lucian's gaze darkened although he refrained from commenting. Meanwhile, the children surrounded Roxanne and gasped in awe. "Mommy, You're gorgeous. The necklace really suits you. In fact, it looks even more beautiful on you. Mr. Farwell has a sharp eye indeed. The praise they showered on her caused Roxanne to blush. Trying hard to hide her emotions, she looked down at the children and smiled. You haven't opened the presents I bought you, have you? Let's go inside and do it. Elated by the mention of presents, the children followed Roxanne into the mansion. After the children settled down on the sofa to open their presents, jubilant cheers echoed in the living room from time to time. When she saw how happy the children looked, Roxanne beamed with satisfaction. At that moment, a warm and familial atmosphere filled the living room. Standing by the side and watching Roxanne interacting happily with the children while wearing the necklace he gave her, Lucian couldn't help but imagine it to be a proposal ring that Roxanne was wearing on her finger. I wonder how long does Roxanne want me to wait? Just as he was lost in his thoughts, the children's voices suddenly rang out beside his ear. Daddy, look! I'm wearing the same outfit as Archie and Benny. Estella's voice brimmed with excitement. When Lucian looked down, he noticed all three of them were wearing the t-shirts and shorts Roxanne bought them. She had chosen vibrant colors on purpose so that both boys and girls would look equally good in them. Dressed in the same outfits, the children looked up at Lucian. In that instant, he suddenly felt as if all three of them resembled each other. Honnête Helis, the feeling quickly dissipated when they turned their attention away. Daddy, help us take a picture. Only Estella maintained her gaze as she tugged at his sleeve. I want to take a picture. When Lucian raised Estella, he seldom took pictures of her. Hence, the only pictures at home were mostly taken by Sonia when she visited. However, ever since Estella began to spend time with Roxanne, the latter's habit of taking pictures rubbed off on her. Thus, she would often wish to have her picture taken for the sake of memory. Since it was a simple task, Lucian had no reason to refuse. Whipping out his phone, he did his duty as the cameraman. Before they knew it, darkness took over the sky. After acting as a driver and mover for the day and giving Roxanne a gift, Lucian naturally stayed back for dinner. Once they had their fill, he played with the children for a while before taking his leave. It's getting late, so I'll be going home now. Essie, before he could even finish, Essie declined, I want to stay with Mommy. Lucian threw her a glance before continuing, I'll leave Essie with you for the next 2 days. Tell me if you can't manage, and I'll come and pick the children up. Archie and Benny's eyes lit up when they heard Lucian's words. Given how smart they were, they caught the most important part of his sentence. He considered them his children. Even though they couldn't address him as daddy yet, he had already seen them as his own. Both of them were ecstatic when the fact dawned upon them. As for Estella, she was filled with delight upon receiving permission to stay with her mother. Stroking Estella's face gently, Roxanne agreed with a smile. She'll be in good hands. Lucian flashed a smile. I know. Even if Roxanne didn't do anything in particular, Estella would be happy just staying by her side. With that, Lucian drove back to the manor after leaving Roxanne's home. The moment he stepped in, he was greeted by the glum-looking Sonia sitting on the couch. What are you doing here? With an equally solemn expression, Lucian took a seat in the armchair beside his mother. Sonia's brows knitted at her son's question. Why can't I drop by? What's wrong with me wanting to visit my granddaughter? Lucian gave her the side eye while maintaining his frosty expression. Essie's not here. She's with her mom. His voice made it sound like he and Roxanne were a married couple who happened to be separated by distance. The frown on Sonia's face deepened. I was the one who painstakingly raised Essie, while that woman abandoned her after giving birth. She should be thanking me for allowing Essie to acknowledge her instead. Don't you think it's unfair to me to let Essie stay with her and allow her to enjoy the fruits of my labor? From Sonia's perspective, Roxanne had no hand in bringing Estella up into a healthy and obedient girl. That woman wasn't around when Essie needed her the most, so why is she acting all noble now? Lucian furrowed his brows. Roxanne is Essie's birth mother. Besides, what happened back then was a misunderstanding. I'm sure you heard of it too. Roxanne had thought that Essie was dead. Sonia snorted in response. Nobody knows if she's telling the truth. Back then, she left without saying a word. I wouldn't be surprised if she does anything terrible now. Upon hearing his mother's words, there was a hint of disbelief as Lucian stared at her. Sonia changed her tact reluctantly, cognizant that she had upset her son. I was the one who raised Essie, so how can I not miss my granddaughter? By leaving her with Roxanne, what am I to do when I miss her? Lucian replied in annoyance, after spending so much time with Essie throughout the years, what's the big deal about not seeing her for a few days? Now that her condition has improved, she needs Roxanne by her side. Also, you not seeing her will allow her emotions to stabilize. What are you trying to say? Sonia was outraged by her son's ridicule. Roxanne might be Essie's birth mother, but I'm her biological grandmother too. How will my visit agitate her? Yes, I realize that I used the wrong method in educating Essie previously, but I have apologized for it and promised not to behave that way again. Lucian pinched his forehead as his frustration with his mother began to grow. I'm glad you know that you're responsible for what has become of your relationship with Essie. Even though Lucian didn't know what his mother did for Estella to resent her so much, he had learned his lesson from what happened with Aubrey. In fact, details weren't important. What truly mattered was Estella's will. Thus, Lucian would keep those Estella resented away from her until she was willing to forgive them. With nothing to counter Lucian with, Sonia felt her exasperation grow. No matter what, I'll never hurt Essie. Lucian agreed with a nod. I know, but you're still not patient enough. Besides, if you're really concerned about her, you should understand what her true needs are. Sonia obviously knew what they were. That little girl can't help but stick to Roxanne like glue now. That was the exact reason she was upset. When something suddenly occurred to her, she suppressed the anger in her heart. Since you don't want me to interfere with Essie's life, let's talk about the Pearson family. Lucian's face turned grim at the mention of the Pearson family. What about them? Wearing an awkward expression, Sonia spoke in a dissatisfied tone. Aren't you being too harsh on the Pearson family? Both our families go back a long way, while old Mr. Pearson is still your benefactor in the end. Is it really necessary to drive them into a corner when teaching them a lesson is enough? Lucian replied firmly, they brought this upon themselves. Sonia frowned. It's true that they have made a mistake, but by being so ruthless against them, it sends out the wrong signal to the other families. Who will dare work with us after this? Now that you have cancelled the engagement with Aubrey, she won't be able to harm Essie anymore. That alone should be enough. At the back of her mind, Sonia was still planning to turn Aubrey into an obedient puppet of hers. Aubrey aside, no other family will dare allow their daughter to marry into our family once they see how vindictive our family can be. The more Sonia thought about it, the more worried she became. Hence, the main purpose of her visit was to discuss the issue with Lucian. However, Lucian's expression drastically changed when his mother pleaded for mercy on behalf of the Pearson family. Before they harmed Essie, they should have considered the consequences of crossing me. Besides, I don't think the lesson I have taught them comes close to being enough. Even Sonia couldn't help but shudder in the face of Lucian's rage. Despite that, she was adamant in her persuasion. Don't forget that Aubrey had waited for you many years and her feelings for you are true. She just chose the wrong way before she could finish. Lucian cut her off. Don't ever mention that wicked woman in front of me. If this is all you want to talk about today, you can leave now. I'm tired and need to rest. With that, Lucian headed upstairs without giving Sonia the opportunity to respond. His reaction rendered Sonia speechless. That night, Jonathan could barely sleep after receiving a message from Lucian. At daybreak the next morning, Jonathan strode into the Farwell residence. Mr. Queen, Catalina greeted him upon his arrival. Jonathan nodded in acknowledgement. Where's Lucian? He went up to his study after breakfast. Jonathan then ended his conversation with Catalina and headed up. There was no way he could rest until he clarified with Lucian what the message from the night before meant. Just as he was about to knock, the door opened from the inside. What are you doing here? Lucian gave his guest a placid look before inviting him into the study. Jonathan almost choked on himself. Why is he even asking me that? I obviously want to know what he is trying to convey with the message last night. It's one thing for me to do his bidding all the time, but what's with throwing a hot potato in my direction out of nowhere? Because of him, I hardly slept a wink. Lucian, aren't you being unreasonable? He exasperated. Jonathan took his seat opposite Lucian. Why did you have to drag me into this mess with the Pearson family? Although everyone is kicking them while they're down, wouldn't it be inappropriate for the Queen family to join in? Before Lucian's engagement with Aubrey was cancelled, the Farwell, Pearson, and Queen families enjoyed a close relationship. Now that the two families had fallen out, it wouldn't look good on the Queen family if they were to take over Pearson Group. Jonathan had to take the interest of the Queen family into account, although he disagreed with Aubrey's actions. Cocking his brow, Lucian couldn't believe his ears. What's wrong? You're not the one engaged to her. Don't tell me that you secretly harbor feelings for her. Jonathan was triggered by his friend's words. Me? Interest in her? Oh, please. The last thing I want is to be anywhere near her. Lucian frowned in response. So, what's the problem? The Queen family has always been close to the Farwell family. Now that we have cast aside the Pearson family, you'll have to make your stand public sooner or later. Seeing the truth in Lucian's words, Jonathan wrinkled his brows without retorting. Lucian added, furthermore, Queen Group and Pearson Group are both involved in the medical industry. It's only natural the former takes over the latter. It's also a brilliant opportunity for Queen Group to expand. Jonathan couldn't deny that every word of Lucian's struck a chord with him. The wavering look in his eyes grew increasingly obvious. Weighing the consequences was the main reason he was unable to sleep. Even though taking over the Pearson family business was detrimental to Queen Group's reputation, it was nothing compared to the company's expansion that resulted. Furthermore, it was as Lucian had said, the relationship between the Queen family and the Pearson family was established on the account of the Farwell family. Now that the Farwells and Pearsons had fallen out, there was no reason for the Queen family to maintain that relationship. Holding that thought, Jonathan made his decision. I understand. Leave it to me. Now that he thought about it, he realized there was no reason for his earlier hesitancy. Lucian broke into a smile when he saw that Jonathan was convinced. I have not forgotten all the help you have extended to me recently. The assets of the Pearson family will be my way of thanking you. At Lucian's remark, Jonathan inwardly rolled his eyes. I was the one who expended the effort to obtain them. That being said, the Pearson family doesn't have the capability to fight me, considering their current state. Basically, they're free resources. Lucian merely regarded the man with an inscrutable look in his eyes. Intimidated by his stare, Jonathan changed the subject and inquired about his relationship with Roxanne at present. How are things going with Roxanne? Don't tell me there's no progress even after you went on a trip with her. I'd been racking my brain to give him ideas for a long time. If there's really no progress, I truly feel sorry for Roxanne. Speaking of the events that transpired in Jade Burrow, Lucian inexorably recalled that passionate night there. His gaze darkened a shade. Jonathan noticed the change in the man's expression. Alas, he couldn't tell what it meant and could only eye Lucian in puzzlement. Just answer the question. Don't grin so devilishly when I'm not Roxanne. No sooner had those words rang out than Lucian corralled his thoughts. His expression turned indifferent once more. It's going pretty well, thanks to your idea. That was considered his reply to the question earlier. However, Jonathan remained unsatisfied and wanted to know the details. What does that mean? What stage exactly have things progressed to? Based on his understanding of Lucian, merely holding hands would already be considered pretty well since the latter's relationship with Roxanne was exceedingly tense previously. Regretfully, Lucian merely smiled without saying anything. Jonathan scrutinized him for a long moment while speculating soundlessly. They must have made rapid progress. Otherwise, he wouldn't be wearing such an expression. Following that realization, gratification flooded him. Yay! My back-breaking effort in giving him countless ideas hadn't gone to waste. As Lucian seeming had no plans of revealing anything further, he tacitly stopped harping on that line of question. Subsequently, the two of them briefly discussed the Pearson family's resources. Although Jonathan had already decided to acquire those assets, he still had to be mindful of his boundaries. When the discussion ended, Jonathan got up and left, heading directly to Queen Group. That very afternoon, Pearson Group, which was already in a precarious state, suddenly took a turn for the worse. Despite having sold off most of the shares in his hands, Samuel still had to clean up his own mess. As Pearson Group's share prices plummeted sharply, all shareholders started complaining incessantly. For that reason, Pearson Group had no choice but to lower the share prices repeatedly. Unexpectedly, a few branch offices were requested to be delisted and liquidated due to the overly low share prices. Consequently, Pearson Group was left with no other recourse but to sacrifice those few branch offices. The other members of the Pearson family, whose interests were linked to those companies, were already resentful because of the trouble caused by Samuel and his family. In the face of their companies facing the threat of bankruptcy, they just about camped at the man's house, demanding an explanation from him. Hence, Samuel was swamped. Even Aubrey was forced to cooperate with her father to resolve the mess together despite her dissatisfaction with the current situation. Unfortunately, nothing quite worked even after they had bustled around for a long time. It was as though someone was pushing things along behind the scenes, for the speed at which Pearson Group was deteriorating was unbelievably fast. In just a few days, almost all of the Pearson family's companies had been shut down. The handful that remained were also struggling badly while surviving on bank loans. Alas, the person manipulating things secretly didn't even leave them that much hope. Instead, he seemed determined on destroying the Pearson family entirely. Even the bank was no longer willing to give them any loans. Worse still, they were requested to repay their loans in the past. However, the Pearson family was in no state to repay their loans right then. The only recourse would be to declare bankruptcy. At that point, Aubrey felt as though her entire world had collapsed. After all, she had been living a pampered life since young and had never experienced such hardship. Aubrey's desperation was shared by Samuel, who had been bustling around for several days. Sonia's promise gave him hope, and he thought she would really succeed in convincing Lucian to spare the Pearson family this once. Little did he expect that not only did Farwell Group's oppression of the Pearson Group persist, but it even intensified. In fact, it was so bad that the Pearson family was on the verge of bankruptcy. His hard work in the past few days ended up in vain, resulting in his relatives knocking on his door and questioning him about it one after another. In just a few days, most of his hair had turned grey. At that very moment, Samuel was sitting at the desk in the study with a grim expression on his face. In front of him were a few staff members from the bank. At the same time, a handful of asset transfer agreements were clearly laid out on the desk. After the bank's staff member had reviewed one of the documents, he slid it over to Samuel. "Please sign here, Mr. Pearson." Jolted out of his thoughts, Samuel swept his gaze over the asset he had acquired through blood, sweat, and tears. Such distress inundated him that his hands trembled, and his signature became shaky. It went without saying that the bank's staff member showed no concern for his feelings. Seeing that the man had already signed the document, he started reviewing the next asset transfer agreement without hesitation. At the side, Gina stood before the desk, her face as pale as a sheet. She initially wanted to comfort Samuel, but his dark expression had her ultimately swallow the words on the tip of her tongue, even dare breathe, going out and pouring him a glass of water. Samuel was suppressing his wrath in the first place, so the sight of a glass of water appearing in his line of vision out of the blue promptly sparked his fury. Slamming his hand on the desk, he shot to his feet. "I'm not in the mood to drink water. I've got nothing left, and I can't even catch my breath." As though to verify his claim, the voice of the bank's staff member drifted into the air on the heels of that. "Mr. Pearson, this house no longer belongs to you. The bank will be seizing this mansion tomorrow morning. Please move out on time so as not to affect our work." Samuel was so livid that he trembled all over. "Scram! Get out of here!" The bank's staff member knew that the Pearson family had already fallen and the man in front of him was nothing more than a paper tiger. Thus, he paid no mind to Samuel's fit of rage. "We have already contacted a moving company for you. Please move out as soon as possible. If you do not cooperate, we will be taking forceful measures." The instant Samuel heard that, his face flushed bright red with fury. The Pearson family has already fallen far from grace. If the bank were to employ forceful measures on top of that, I'd lose my dignity as well. He inhaled deeply several times. Ultimately, he said nothing further, merely watching the bank's staff leave with a grave expression on his face. "Are we really moving out, Samuel?" When Gina and Samuel were the only ones left in the study, Gina gaped at the man incredulously. Ever since she married into the Pearson family, they had been living there. She was already accustomed to the place, so she truly couldn't accept abruptly moving out into an inferior environment at that. Without warning, Samuel pounded his hand on the desk and snapped, "Why are you asking me that? You should go and ask your precious daughter. If it weren't for her, we would never have ended up in such straits." At his sudden outburst, Gina jumped in fright. She parted her lips slightly, but she dared not ask anything else. After venting his anger, Samuel plopped down dejectedly, thinking he would likely have to spend the rest of his life in poverty. The more he dwelled upon it, the more furious he grew. "Samuel!" Gina was racking her brain for a way out of the predicament when she saw Samuel abruptly leaping to his feet after bringing his hand down on the desk, then striding toward the study door. Upon seeing that, she hastily followed, afraid that he would do something impulsive again as before. Meanwhile, Aubrey was sitting in her bedroom with a gloomy expression on her face. The Queen family. It turned out to be the Queen family. While busy handling the mess in the past few days, she didn't forget to investigate the culprit sabotaging things behind the scenes. Initially, she thought that it would be some other family who seized that opportunity to hit them while they were down. Ever had she imagined that it would be Jonathan? She could surmise without even having to ponder upon the matter that it was definitely Lucian who instructed him to do so. If he hadn't received an order from the latter, he wouldn't have had the guts to make a move rashly. "Ah, Lucian! I never expected him to be so ruthless to me that he's determined to push me to a dead end." As she was fuming, her room door was suddenly pushed open. Snapping back to her senses, Aubrey snapped her eyes up and swung her gaze in the direction of the door. Just when she had made out the person who barged in, a slap from Samuel sent her tumbling back onto the bed. "Samuel!" Gina had also been exhausted in the past few days because of the Pearson family's downfall. Coupled with the blows she suffered earlier upon learning that they would have to move out before tomorrow, she was pitifully weak in the legs. By the time she finally arrived at Aubrey's room, she was greeted by the sight of Samuel slapping their daughter. Although Aubrey had done something wrong, she was still Gina's flesh and blood. It was as though that slap from Samuel struck her squarely, for her heart abruptly clenched. In a flash, strength infused her legs, and she sprinted over to shield her daughter. "Get out of my way!" I'm going to teach this imbecile a lesson today. Samuel snarled coldly. Calm down. Things are already set in stone anyway. Besides, Aubrey hasn't had it easy either these few days. She's already trying her best to make amends for her mistakes. Gina sounded mournful. When Samuel saw that she was still defending Aubrey, his temper spiked further. He was so enraged that his temples throbbed violently. Buzz off. Otherwise, I'm going to hit you as well. After bellowing that, he chastised furiously, this is all on you for spoiling her. If you hadn't encouraged her, she wouldn't have ended up with such attitude today. Gina was both panicked and fearful, her lips quivering uncontrollably. Step aside, Mom, Aubrey urged softly, gathering her wits about her at long last. Then, she stepped out from behind her mother. Holding her head up high, she regarded her father with obstinacy etched across her features. I did nothing wrong. Samuel lifted his hand and slapped her again. Even now, you're still unrepentant? Are you only going to admit to your mistake after I personally send you to prison? Aubrey cradled her cheek, madness brewing in her eyes. I did nothing wrong. If I really did something wrong, that was merely loving Lucian too deeply at that time. He has absolutely no regard for me. I hate him. Noticing that both women were utterly unremorseful, Samuel was so incensed that he almost burst a blood vessel. He calmed himself for some time before he finally managed to suppress his wrath forcibly. Get up and pack your things. When Aubrey heard that, she lifted her eyes and looked at her father in puzzlement. In turn, Samuel glared at her sharply. The Pearson family has gone bankrupt. On top of that, this house is no longer ours. It'll be seized tomorrow, and we've got to get out of here quickly. Bankrupt? Despite knowing ages ago that they would have to face that fact sooner or later, Aubrey still found it hard to believe upon hearing it from her father with her own ears. How could that be? How could it come to pass so quickly? Worse still, we don't even have a house in the end. I've got nothing left. From now on, you'd better behave. If you were to create trouble again, we might not even be able to come out of it alive. Worried that he would really go off the deep end and pummel the two women to death if he continued to stay in the room, Samuel spun on his heel and left after saying that. For the first time in her life, panic swamped Aubrey. She turned to her mother for confirmation. Was Dad telling me the truth earlier, Mom? We're really moving out. Gina was likewise exceedingly reluctant to move out. Unfortunately, she had no other choice but to face reality. She nodded with a grim expression on her face. Yet, very soon, we won't be able to live here anymore. After saying that, she urged earnestly, listen to your father, Aubrey. Don't do anything foolish again. Now that the Pearson family has ended up in such straits, we wouldn't be able to help you even if we wanted to do so if something were to happen to you. In the past, others might give the Pearson family some respect because of the Farwell family. At present, however, things had soured between the Farwell and Pearson families. In fact, the Farwell family went just short of announcing that they were the ones who brought the Pearson family down. Therefore, no one would care about the Pearson family anymore, let alone when the Pearson family had no money then. Aubrey stared at Gina blankly for a few seconds before lifting her eyes and sweeping a gaze over the room that had belonged to her since childhood. In a heartbeat, tears streamed down her face. What gives? Why is it that we're even losing our house, yet that still gets to live in the lap of luxury? Hearing her daughter's grievance, Gina panicked. Calm down, Aubrey. Regretfully, her words fell on deaf ears. Aubrey got to her feet and pushed her mother out of the room. Subsequently, the door was slammed shut in Gina's face with a bang. No matter how much Gina pounded on the tightly closed room door, she received no response from inside. Thus, she could only wait anxiously outside. Lifting a hand, Aubrey wiped her tears dry. She then took out her phone and called Frida. At the Queen residence, Frida was aware of her brother's actions in the past few days. For that reason, she had been worrying herself sick recently. She was afraid that with her brother targeting Aubrey and bringing about the Pearson family's downfall, Aubrey wouldn't sit back and do nothing. To make matters even worse, the latter would likely take it out on her. Alas, it was precisely the matter she dreaded most that came to pass. As Frida was fretting that Aubrey might seek her out, she received a phone call from the latter. Glancing at the caller ID, she was beyond reluctant to answer the call. But in the end, she still took it. Aubrey had lost her mind then. As such, Frida couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't accidentally trigger Aubrey, resulting in the woman telling Lucian about her being Aubrey's accomplice. Verily, she didn't dare risk it. Aubrey, she answered the call carefully, sounding a touch servile. On the other end of the phone, Aubrey's voice was slightly hoarse, but the fury within it was still distinctly audible. Come over to the Pearson residence right this instant. At that demand, guilt showed on Frida's face, and her voice turned conflicted. My brother is watching me like a hawk, forbidding me from going out. Let's just talk on the phone if there's anything. Naturally, Aubrey was no fool and knew that the woman had been avoiding her these days. However, Frida was the only resource available to her right then. You can't go out, but I can. Aren't you afraid that I'll seek Lucian out and tell him about everything you did? The Queen family is making money hand over fist now and is even on closer terms with Farwell Group than before. But if Lucian were to learn that you were my accomplice, say, would he still give a fig about past affections? And would the Queen family become the next Pearson family? Aubrey's voice was laced with threat. At once, Frida's heart lurched. She didn't dare give any more excuses. I'll think of a way to evade my brother's notice as much as possible. Stay calm, Aubrey. I'll be there right away. Still, Aubrey wasn't satisfied. If you don't arrive within half an hour, look for me at Farwell Group instead. Having said that, she hung up directly. Frida was ridden with regret as she stared at the phone screen. If I knew Aubrey would end up like this, I would have never listened to her. Despite her regret, it was too late. Frida stood up slowly while holding her phone. Before leaving, she retrieved a bank card from the drawer out of caution. Where are you going? As soon as she left the bedroom, she immediately saw her brother, who had come out of the study. Jonathan's scrutinizing gaze was filled with suspicion. Frida plastered on a smile. It's nothing. I have stayed at home for too long, so I decided to go out. Jonathan didn't give her the opportunity to lie, instead asking directly, "Are you going to meet Aubrey?" Frida's expression changed drastically as she didn't expect her brother to see through her so quickly. "You're not allowed to go. You're staying at home instead." Not only was Jonathan aware of Lucian's prejudice against Aubrey, but he also knew about Frida's relationship with Aubrey. As a result, he had to make sure Frida had nothing to do with Aubrey right now, or the Queen family would be implicated if Lucian were enraged. Guilt filled Frida's heart, but she pretended to be calm and appeal to his emotions. "Jonathan, Aubrey has been my friend for so long. I can't just leave her when her family is at their lowest. We, girls, aren't like you guys. We can't just cut off ties with our friends immediately even if our families have conflicts with each other." Before she could finish her words, Jonathan interrupted her, somewhat upset. "What's your relationship with her? You should stay away from this kind of woman." Frida bit her lips and looked at Jonathan pitifully. "I'm just going to take a look. It's not like I can do anything to alleviate the Pearson family's situation even if I want to." It was the truth. Even if Lucian personally helped the Pearson family, he would need to inject tons of money in to see any signs of improvement. Other than this, it was impossible for the family to recover from this situation. Frida glanced at her watch. It was getting closer to the time Aubrey had arranged for them to meet. She attempted to persuade Jonathan. "Don't worry. You already know I'm not a courageous person. Even if she asks for my help, I won't dare to do anything. I only assisted her the last time because I assumed she would become a part of the Farwell family. I wouldn't do anything dumb now that I know it's impossible." Jonathan was a rather indulgent brother. Knowing what she said was the truth, he hesitated for a few seconds before he agreed. "You can go and meet her, but you have to understand that you will bear all the consequences if you get bewitched by her and do something dumb. I'll not save you." Jonathan would naturally choose the Queen family over Frida. Frida's heart trembled, and she suddenly felt slightly nervous about meeting Aubrey. For a split second, she thought about explaining everything to Jonathan. However, Frida suppressed the urge when she thought about the Pearson family's situation. She gave an obedient nod. "I understand. I'm not dumb, so you don't have to worry." Jonathan nodded. As he watched his sister leave, he felt slightly worried. He knew that Frida was not a dumb person, so he didn't understand why she would still try to meet Aubrey when she knew about the relationship between the Pearsons and the Farwells. "Is Frida hiding something from me?" After leaving the Queen residence, Frida drove to the Pearson residence immediately. She saw the movers' vehicles outside the Pearson residence when she was walking toward the entrance. Even though she knew that the Pearson family was in a difficult situation and targeted by many parties, she didn't realize it was to this extent. When she recalled Aubrey's tone in the phone call earlier, realization dawned upon her. No wonder Aubrey didn't contact me these few days but suddenly called me today. She's desperate. Upon realizing that, Frida was overwhelmed with emotions. If she went up now, it wouldn't end up well for her as Aubrey would only vent her anger on her. Back then, the Pearson family rose to prominence with the Farwell family's assistance. No one would have been able to predict that the family would fall from grace now. If this fate befalls the Queen family, Frida couldn't help but shiver upon that thought. No. I can't be in cahoots with Aubrey anymore. Who knows what she will make me do to offend the Farwell family in the future? Upon thinking that, her expression stiffened when she walked into the Pearson residence. Frida, are you here for Aubrey? Gina's eyes lit up when she saw Frida and said gladly, help me talk some sense into her. Tell her to be rational and accept our fate. Rita smiled stiffly. I will. With that, she made her way upstairs without casting a second glance at Gina. She heard a thud when she was right in front of Aubrey's room. Frida shuddered in fear and paused in her tracks. She only knocked on the door after the room fell silent. Come in. Aubrey's voice was a touch hoarse. Frida gripped her bag tightly and opened the door. She was greeted by a messy scene. Every movable item in the room was ruined and thrown to the ground. Aubrey was still trying to smash a vase. Aubrey, you. Frida felt tense as she looked at Aubrey warily. She didn't dare to move from her spot near the door. Aubrey glared at her with hatred. These are all my belongings. If I can't bring them away, I'll destroy them. I will not give these things to someone else. With that, she smashed the vase on the ground. It immediately shattered into pieces. Frida immediately took a few steps back to avoid being cut by the pieces. It was evident from Aubrey's appearance that she had just cried. Her eyes were still slightly red, her eyelashes were glistening with tears, and her hair, which had always been exquisitely styled, was slightly messy. Also, Frida immediately noticed the slap mark on Aubrey's face. Her brows furrowed, as she couldn't bear to see Aubrey in this state. Even though she had seen how cruel Aubrey could be, they had been friends for many years. Frida's hatred and fear of her dissipated seeing Aubrey in such a wretched state. Aubrey, calm down. Since it has come down to this, you won't be able to change anything, even if you're angry. You will only hurt yourself. She tried to comfort Aubrey and calm the latter down. However, as soon as she finished speaking, a ceramic ornament flew straight at her. Frida's heart almost stopped as she barely managed to avoid it with her reflexes. The ornament collided with the wall before rolling to her feet. Frida glanced at the chipped ornament beside her with lingering fear in her heart. If I hadn't avoided the ornament in time, it would have struck my head, and I would have been lying on the ground by now. Shut up! Don't think I don't know that your family is behind this. Aubrey screamed hysterically. You escaped unscathed, but the Queen family gobbled up my family's properties, and I bet it won't end there. So, don't you dare say those insincere remarks to me. Startled by her outburst, Frida could not maintain a pleasant attitude anymore. You know I don't have a say in the decisions my family makes. It's pointless to blame me for my brother's actions. Speaking of which, I wouldn't have been kicked out of the management level of Queen Group if I hadn't helped Aubrey target Roxanne. At that thought, a wave of regret washed over Frida. Aubrey's expression turned icy in an instant. Madness brewed in her eyes as she demanded, I can't watch my family reach its end just like this. I want you to go home and figure out a way to make the Queen family cough out everything they took from us. Disbelief crossed Frida's face when she heard the other woman's peremptory request. My words carry no weight in Queen Group now, and there's no way Jonathan will listen to me. I can't do that. You must do it. If you don't, I'll tell Lucian that you gave me the bacterium I fed Essie. Aubrey cut her off coldly. Frida's expression changed abruptly. After witnessing the difficult circumstances of the Pearson family, she deeply regretted her decision to assist Aubrey back then. At the same time, she was afraid that the latter might expose her misdeeds for real. A long while later, Frida forced herself to soften her voice. "Please don't be like this, Aubrey. I'm still a part of the Queen family, so I'll be able to assist you if you need any help. However, if I get kicked out of the Queen family, I won't be able to help you in the future." She then retrieved the bank card she had prepared beforehand and laid it on the bed. "There's 100,000 in this account. Use it to rent a good place. If you need more money, just let me know. I'm here to help you." Aubrey lowered her head to glance at the card before directing her gaze toward Frida again. All of a sudden, her lips curled into a mocking smile. 100,000? Do you take me as a beggar? Frida had a troubled look on her face. With her brows furrowed, she replied, "I wish I could give you more, but I can't access any funds from Queen Group. Jonathan and my grandpa are the ones who provide me with money to spend. If I withdraw a large amount at once, they will inquire about my expenses, and if they find out that I gave the money to you, if that were to happen, Aubrey might not be able to receive any more funds. Worse yet, there was a risk that Frida's prior actions would be revealed. After all, Frida had personally obtained the bacterium that infected Estella from the Queen family's research institute. Should someone look into that matter, they would easily discover her involvement in it. At that point, Aubrey was shaking with rage. 100,000 would not have meant anything to her in the past. Much to her chagrin, however, she could not even fork out 10,000 then. "Take the money first. We'll talk about the rest later." Frida hastened to persuade Aubrey as soon as she noticed that the latter seemed to be wavering. After a long silence, Aubrey clenched her teeth and turned away from Frida. Scram! Just because the Pearson family has fallen from grace doesn't mean you can be rid of me. Remember, I have dirt on you, so you still need to listen to me. Since her engagement with Lucian was called off, Aubrey did not bother putting on an act anymore. She did not even try to mask her desire to use Frida to achieve her goals. Knowing that she had to placate Aubrey first, Frida gritted her teeth silently and flashed the latter an ugly smile. "I know. Don't worry," she assured her. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.